Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
Hey everyone, just a disclaimer about today's episode. It contains testimony about the school shooting that occurred in Parkland, Florida. I realized after I had already scheduled it that this episode is coming out right when many people are getting ready to send their kids to school for this coming school year. So in the event that this is a topic you may not want to listen to right now, listener discretion is advised.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, February 14th, 2018 actually started out as a rather nice day. It was Valentine's Day. And the weather, typical South Florida February weather. Sunny, partly sunny, warm temperatures.
That's prosecutor Stephen Klinger talking to a jury about what happened on February 14th, 2018 at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Although it started off as a normal Valentine's Day, what would later unfold, just before the school day would end, was one of the largest school shootings in American history. At 2:21 p.m., a gunman entered the freshman building on campus, Building 12, also referred to as Building 1200, which held over 900 students. He used an AR-15 style rifle as he made his way around some 30 classrooms in the building. Students, teachers, and staff hid behind locked classroom doors, sinking behind desks and bookshelves, attempting to shield themselves from the barrage of gunfire that rained down upon a once safe place. At one point, the gunman appeared to set off the school's fire alarm, drawing even more kids into the chaos. In total, 17 people were killed, and another 17 were injured. It was all at the hands of a former student, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz. As news broke about the tragic events, outrage poured out from across the community and the country. Questions would begin to rise to the surface. How was a tragedy like this even able to happen? Parkland, Florida, near Boca Raton, had been voted the safest city in the state just 2 days prior. As everybody looked to the shooter, who was taken into custody later that day, another person at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas would also come into focus. Someone else who, according to prosecutors, also bore some responsibility for what happened that day. This is Jillian in partnership with Law and Crime. You are listening to Court Junkie, episode 248. Around 2 p.m. that Valentine's Day afternoon, Nicholas Cruz, then 19 years old, took an Uber and was dropped off near Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School.
And on this day, at approximately 2:19 in the afternoon, Nicholas Cruz, and I'm going to only say his name once from here on, and I will refer to him as either the shooter, the active shooter, or the gunman.
Now, I'm going to follow the prosecutor's lead here, who said he would only refer to the shooter's name once in his opening statements and then never again. So here on out, we'll just call him the shooter. The shooter had been expelled from the school after starting a fight. It had been the last straw in a series of behavioral issues that he ran into during his time there. The issues were serious enough that math teacher Jim Gard told the Miami Herald back in 2018 that the shooter was banned from the campus if he was carrying a backpack. But on February 14th, 2018, after he was dropped off in an Uber, a witness would later say they saw him carrying a backpack and a rifle soft case as he made his way onto the school grounds. He was wearing parts of an ROTC uniform and was walking purposefully towards the freshman building. Moments later, that same witness would report hearing the first rounds of gunshots. The shooter had entered Building 12 and had taken out his rifle in a stairwell near the entrance. He walked out into the hallway and immediately began firing. Shooting down the hallway, shooting at locked classroom doors, shooting through walls. The echo of bullets seemed never-ending. It's at this point where the school's resource officer, or SRO, Scott Peterson, entered the picture. At 2:23, 2 minutes after the shooting began, he's seen on video making his way towards Building 12. He reported fireworks or gunshots being fired, although he appeared to not know exactly where they were coming from.
I hear shots fired by the football field. Shots fired by the football field.
Shots fired by the football field. Heard.
We're looking at the 1200 building. It's going to be the 300 building. It's going to be right off of Holmberg Road by the senior lot.
Video cameras showed that Peterson stayed between Building 12 and Building 7 during the shooting. He would later make another call, saying that students he spoke with thought there were firecrackers being set off, but no one was sure. He eventually relayed that the shots were by or inside Building 12. Meanwhile, the shooter continued his reign of terror inside. He focused on 4 classrooms until he made his way back to the stairwell to go to the 2nd and 3rd floors. The school went into complete lockdown. Some students were able to flee the building, running to local businesses and the football field. Others were forced to hunker down in their classrooms, sending text messages and making phone calls to their loved ones. Some brave students made harrowing 911 calls. The shooter went down another stairwell and dropped the rifle and his backpack. He then joined groups of students who were fleeing the building, blending in amongst them and disappearing into the crowd. At 2:32, approximately 11 minutes after the first shots were fired, Broward deputies, along with officers from the Coral Springs Police Department, entered Building 12. They found 17 students and staff members dead. Another 17 were injured. Survivors were taken to local hotels to reunite with their families. The shooter was found in a nearby neighborhood after a local police officer matched his ROTC uniform to the bulletin that had gone out warning that he was still at large. He was arrested without incident and later admitted to police that he was the shooter and that he had left the weapon somewhere. He was charged with 17 counts of premeditated murder and held without bond. He was later convicted and sentenced to life in prison. But there was one other person who would face criminal charges in the case, the first ever of its kind in a shooting such as this one. As day turned to night on that Valentine's Day, questions about what had happened and whether all protocols had been followed started to arise. Officers hadn't breached the building until approximately 11 minutes after the first shots were fired. But there was one armed sheriff's deputy on the school grounds even before the shooting began, and that was Scott Peterson. After he was seen on video, walking between Building 12 and Building 7, he wasn't seen again until much later, 47 minutes later. A school resource officer like Peterson is often advocated for in the wake of school shootings, with politicians arguing that having an armed and trained law enforcement officer on campus would prevent tragedies like this from happening. But where was Peterson, and why had he never gone inside Building 12? Another person outraged over the situation was none other than the Broward County Sheriff, Sheriff Scott Israel. Israel told the media that school surveillance video showed Peterson taking a defensive position while the shooting was taking place, but never actually entering the building. On Thursday, February 22nd, 2018, 8 days later, Sheriff Israel announced that his department had reviewed security cameras from the school and had spoken to several witnesses, as well as with Officer Peterson himself, about what had happened.
I want to clarify any rumors, conjecture, or stories that have been out there. Scott Peterson was absolutely on campus through this entire event. He was armed. He was in uniform. After seeing video, witness statements, and Scott Peterson's very own statement, I decided this morning to suspend Scott Peterson without pay, pending an internal investigation.
He said that shortly after he was notified of his suspension, Peterson decided to retire.
We're not going to disclose the video at this time, and we may never disclose the video, depending on the prosecution and the criminal case. But what I saw was a deputy arrive at the west side of Building 12, take up a position, and he never went in.
He was asked by a reporter what he thought Peterson should have done.
Went in, addressed the killer, killed the killer.
He said 2 additional deputies were restricted as an internal investigation was launched. He also revealed that the gunman had a long record with the department. According to Sheriff Israel, over the course of the previous 10 years between 2008 and 2018, the local sheriff's department had received 23 calls about the shooter and his brother. Scott Peterson's alleged lack of action on the day of the shooting garnered national attention as well. Then President Donald Trump referred to Peterson as a coward.
Deputy Sheriff Peterson, I guess his name is. I mean, they brought it out. I was surprised. But it deserves to be brought out. What he did, he's trained his whole life. There's an example. But when it came time to get in there and do something, he didn't have the courage or something happened. But he certainly did a poor job. There's no question about that. He was there for 5 minutes. For 5 minutes. That was during the entire shooting. He heard it right at the beginning. So he certainly did a poor job. But that's a case where somebody was outside, they're trained, they didn't react properly under pressure, or they were a coward. It was a real shot to the police department.
In April 2018, Andrew Pollack filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Peterson, alleging that his inaction had allowed innocent people to die. His daughter, 18-year-old Meadow Pollack, was a senior at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and had already been accepted to Lynn University in Boca Raton when she was killed. Along with Peterson, 7 other defendants were listed in the suit. Similar lawsuits followed, including one filed by a student, Anthony Borges, who had suffered severe injuries that would require a lifetime of medical treatment. Borges had been shot 5 times and sustained damage to his lungs, abdomen, and legs. He and his family sued the Broward County School District for negligence. Another lawsuit against the school district included 52 families connected to people who were killed, injured, or traumatized from what happened. In June 2018, Peterson spoke out for the first time. Speaking with Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, he said the events would haunt him for the rest of his life, but he insisted that he didn't violate any policies or procedures. He said that he struggled to determine where the gunshots were coming from. His first instinct was that there was a sniper shooting at the building, not a gunman inside. He argued that he did what he was trained to do and explained why he had not entered the building. "I would have had to check obviously every classroom," he said. "You can't just go willy-nilly and go, let me look here, let me look there. You have to check each room."
I've been with the agency 32 years. I know the policies. I know the procedures. I communicated right on that scene. I did everything that I felt at the time was appropriate.
You cannot violate policy and procedures and still not get it right.
Right. You're absolutely right.
Is that what happened here?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, like I said, Savannah, this will haunt me the rest of my life. It will. Because my kid, Those were my kids. So, and that's why it hurts the way it does.
To his critics, including then President Trump, Peterson said they simply weren't there to witness what he went through.
I think it was just easy for them to make me, the punching bag.
This is one of the worst things that's ever happened, one of the worst school shootings. And you're getting blamed for not stopping it.
If I knew everything, I would have been in there and engaging that shooter. And you know what? Hopefully I would have shot him. He might have shot me. I don't know the what ifs, but it's been hard. I mean, but it's nothing compared to what these families went through. They lost their kids, and kids were killed and injured. They lost them. I'm alive. I mean, going through what I went through, it's horrifying because as a police officer, if you're a coward, that's the worst label you could have as a police officer. And it's not true.
He also addressed the families of the victims.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I didn't. I'm sorry that I didn't know where he was. Or it was one person. I didn't know who it was or where they were initially. And it's tough. It's tough. And knowing what I know now, it makes it even tougher. Because I know about active shooters. It's not like I have no knowledge, like what can happen. It's just I didn't believe when I first got there that that's what was going on. And like I said, it's going to haunt me the rest of my life.
Some parents pushed back on the interview, insisting that Peterson deserved no sympathy. Fred Gutenberg, whose daughter Jamie Gutenberg was just 14 when she was killed in the hallway of the school, didn't mince his words when it came to Peterson. They're not his kids. He didn't go to a single funeral. He has not mourned a single child. He has not missed a single kid's birthday. He's not going to miss Father's Day. He didn't miss Mother's Day. He isn't missing holidays. How dare he refer to them as his kids? They're not his kids. They're his victims, he told local CBS Miami News. Andrew Pollock, who had filed a lawsuit against Peterson, called him a coward. More outrage grew when it became public knowledge that Peterson would be receiving his full 6-figure pension plan with his retirement. Although many argued that he should not have been entitled to those benefits, the sheriff's department insisted that he had not violated any clause that would prevent him from receiving it. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement launched a full investigation into the shooting, as well as Scott Peterson's role. They published their first set of findings in January 2019. The report confirmed that when the first gunshots went off, Peterson was still inside the school's main building, waiting for a student's parent to arrive in an unrelated incident. Campus monitor Andrew Medina had spotted the shooter arriving on campus and was aware of the warning placed against him. Not long after, according to the report, Medina heard what he thought were firecrackers coming from Building 12. He called the noise into Peterson, who had originally claimed to be in his office at the time. Video footage indicated that Peterson was in a different part of the main building. At 2:22 p.m., a minute after the initial shots, Peterson began moving through the main building. He linked up with school security specialist Kelvin Greenleaf. They couldn't find a golf cart to head to the other side of campus. When they heard the fire alarm start blaring from Building 12, they began running. Peterson had told detectives, "I thought it was outside. It was so loud and so close, I thought it was probably outside." But the report contradicted Peterson's account. Quote, "From surveillance video review, we know Deputy Peterson's statement regarding the events to be false. As Peterson and Greenleaf met near the northwest corner of Building 1, they both walked south along the west side of Building 1 towards a golf cart that was parked on the side of the building. Greenleaf knocked on a nearby door, attempting to get keys to the cart. Peterson had his left hand near his school radio, in a manner consistent with someone transmitting on the radio. There were no witnesses who testified that Deputy Peterson was transmitting anything at that time." By the time Peterson had reached Building 12 along with Greenleaf, 21 people had already been shot and 9 had been killed. Despite the confusion surrounding what the sounds were, fireworks or gunshots, quote, Peterson told Greenleaf to leave the area since he didn't have a weapon. This is evidence that Peterson knew there were gunshots and that they posed an immediate threat. Greenleaf said that Peterson did not approach the east doors, he did not look into the windows, and he did not access his keys or ask Greenleaf for his keys. Greenleaf said that Peterson had his firearm drawn and seemed stressed. Greenleaf estimated that he heard 5 to 7 gunshots coming from within Building 12, the report noted. Peterson had previously told detectives that once he heard more gunshots, he called for a code red or a school lockdown. The report said there is no evidence that this took place. Despite hearing gunshots, Peterson never entered the building. He situated himself between buildings 12 and 7 and stayed there for 47 minutes. It was at 2:23 when Peterson called for a shutdown of the school. At 2:28, he advised local Broward Sheriff deputies to stay clear of both buildings 12 and 13. Broward, do not approach the 12 or 1300 buildings. Stay at least 500 feet away at this point, he said. Moments later, after the shooter had left the building, Peterson witnessed at least 18 armed officers move into Building 12, but the report says he still never moved from his position. Peterson did not leave his location until 3:11 p.m. A tactical operations center was set up by a SWAT team in Building 13. Peterson arrived there to draw out a map of the campus for the team to begin clearing each classroom. This was at 3:45 p.m. The report stated that it was unknown what Peterson did between 3:11 and 3:45. The report also disputed claims made by Peterson in the Today Show interview. Although he said he believed there may have been a sniper, he had positioned himself in an open area where he could have potentially become a target. When he alleged that he stayed in the position outside the building to contain the area, the report made sure to clarify that that particular response tactic had been abandoned in 1999 after the Columbine shooting. It was widely known that the only tactic was to move towards the sound of gunfire and engage the suspect. Quote, the sheriff's office confronted Peterson about his failed response, and he resigned from the Broward Sheriff's Office. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Office of Executive Investigations, attempted to interview Deputy Peterson in regard to their criminal investigation into the law enforcement response. However, Deputy Peterson's attorney declined that interview. The report concluded that Peterson had failed to act, which had endangered more students and staff. Quote, former Deputy Scott Peterson was derelict in his duty on February 14, 2018, failed to act consistent with his training, and fled to a position of personal safety while the shooter shot and killed MSDHS students and staff. Peterson was in a position to engage the shooter and mitigate further harm to others, and he willfully decided not to do so. Another report obtained by CNN after the shooting revealed that Peterson was aware of the shooter's troubled behavior, as was most of the staff. 18 months prior, the shooter had made various threats to himself and others, and on September 28, 2016, Peterson, along with 2 guidance counselors at the school, recommended that he be involuntarily committed under the Baker Act. The mental health facility said the shooter did not meet the criteria. He was later expelled, and a warning about his presence on campus was issued to the staff. After a 15-month-long investigation that included 184 witnesses, hours of video footage, and over 200 reports, former Deputy Scott Peterson was arrested on June 5, 2019. He was facing a total of 11 felony counts, 7 counts of child neglect, 3 counts of culpable negligence, and 1 count of perjury. If convicted, Scott Peterson, 56 years old, could get up to 96 years in prison. He was booked inside the same jail that housed the shooter. He was held on $102,000 bail and later was released with an ankle monitor. Some of the victims' families rejoiced at the news. On Twitter, Fred Gutenberg wrote, I have no comment except to say, rotten hell, Scott Peterson. You could have saved some of the 17. You could have saved my daughter. You did not, and then you lied about it, and you deserve the misery coming your way. Lori Oladeff, the mother of another victim, Alyssa Oladeff, told CBS News, "With him being arrested today, that gives accountability to me and the 17 families." Peterson's attorney, Joseph Geruzzo, called the arrest nothing more than politically motivated retribution. He pointed out that no one else from the Broward Sheriff's Office or from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School had been criminally charged. Scott Peterson's trial started in June 2023. The jury would have to decide if he did everything in his power to help the school back in 2018, given the information he had. Prosecutor Stephen Klinger gave the opening statements for the prosecution. He told the jury that with only 20 minutes left in the day, school campus monitors were going around campus, unlocking various gates for students to leave in their cars or for buses to enter the campus. He said the shooter knew of this routine and planned his arrival when he knew that there would be an unlocked gate to enter through. He noted that Peterson had been a deputy for 32 years. He was an SRO via contract with Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and was granted special privileges in his position to keep the school safe. Peterson had been at the school for approximately 9 years. Part of that job was knowing the campus, students, and teaching staff like the back of his hand. He said his job as an SRO was to seek and take out an active shooter if needed.
Now, during that interim, those periods, the defendant has lots of training. He is trained on active shooters scenarios. He is trained how to handle a situation where he is the only person there, the only law enforcement person there to handle an active shooter. He's also trained that he has another officer with him or a group of officers, how to go in and how to handle an active shooter type situation. For the most part, active shooter situation, you go toward the gunshots. You're trained to go toward those shots, to find that shooter, because every shot could be a death. In the old days, it was, form a perimeter, not after Columbine. It changed. Usually, active shooter scenarios happen very quickly. And you've got to get in and you've got to find the shooter, or do everything you can to find him so that you can stop the killing.
He told the jury that in January 2018, a month before the Valentine's Day shooting, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas conducted a training class for staff and teachers designed to prepare them in the event of an active shooter. Klinger explained that teachers were instructed on how to harden their classrooms, cover windows, lock doors, and find safe places inside their classroom for their students. Klinger spoke extensively about the cameras at the high school, which cover large swaths of main areas of the school. He said that when the shooting began, Peterson, alongside other school monitors, were at the front of the campus in and around Building 1.
The video from outside the number 1, the administration building, shows security specialist Greenleaf and defendant Peterson meeting outside that building. And they start to walking out. They're not rushing, but they're walking toward a cart. Everyone at the school uses golf carts. They use them to get around the campus. And they're going to get on the golf cart because information has come over the school radio that something is happening in the 1200 building. Something's not right. So they go to get a cart. It turns out they can't get the key for the cart, turn it on. And they turn around, they start walking the other way, and another cart pulls up. And in the cart is school monitor Medina. Medina had been over by the 1200 building. Now he comes over, and about the same time, the alarm system in the school goes off.
He said both Greenleaf and Peterson made their way towards Building 12, where the fire alarms were going off. He said despite being right outside where the shooting was taking place, Peterson never entered the building, And in fact, he remained just outside the building for over 40-plus minutes as the massacre continued to unfold and until law enforcement was able to get inside. Klinger detailed the shooting bullet by bullet, listing off each victim and where they got shot. He also clarified that each of the charges represented victims that were killed after Peterson arrived outside Building 12 and was in close enough distance to interfere with the shooting. The perjury charge stemmed from Peterson's changing story in the days following the shooting about the number of gunshots he was able to hear.
It was a horrific day. And 17 beautiful people were lost. Another 17 were injured. The ones, in this case, the charges all stem from the third floor. They're all from either people who passed away on the third floor or who were injured on the third floor. But overall, it was a unspeakable, horrible day.
Peterson's attorney, Mark Eiglarsh, gave the opening statements for the defense. He said the state was using Peterson as a sacrifice and that he was thrown under the bus in the aftermath of the shooting.
My client is not a criminal, and the evidence will not prove that he committed any criminal offenses at all. He didn't know where those shots were coming from precisely. We've got 22 witnesses under subpoena who will come in here and tell you that they too heard the same shots my client did and could not discern precisely where the shots were coming from. There was a pronounced echo and reverberation that the witnesses will talk about that left them hearing the same shots and wondering, where is that coming from? He did everything that he possibly could with the limited information that he had to help serve and protect everybody at that school. He was sacrificed.
He said the shooter was in Building 12 for 6 minutes and 36 seconds. Peterson showed up at the end of the rampage and would have only had 4 minutes and 15 seconds to sweep the building.
What is not in dispute at all is that when the shooter was on the first floor, killing faculty and children, my client wasn't even on the scene yet, which is why he's not charged at all with those offenses.
Eigler showed the jury a picture of the shooter and argued that he was the only one to blame and the only one responsible for the carnage. He highlighted that Peterson had an exemplary career for 32 years and was a father with 4 children. He said there was no argument that Peterson would risk his life for his students.
The evidence will show that he won in 2012 Parkland's Deputy of the Year. In 2015, he won Parkland's School Resource Officer of the Year. And then once again in 2016, he won Parkland's Deputy of the Year. This is within just 2 years of the February 2018 vicious attack on that school. This was an award-winning, decorated officer. He was an elite officer who did his job zealously and professionally and with courage.
Eiglarsh alleged that Sheriff Scott Israel put his ego first and never personally talked with Peterson about the events of that day. He also said it was evident that Peterson did not know where the gunman was once he realized what was going on. He also insisted that his client did call a code red into the school to report an active shooter. He said the original call reported fireworks near Building 12, and it wasn't until the fire alarm went off that Peterson began running. He also pointed out that school monitor Andrew Medina had witnessed the shooter arrive on campus and never mentioned it to anyone. He showcased to the jury the vast scope of Building 12 to demonstrate just how large the area was for one person to cover.
He walks close to the door. He hears those shots. The Las Vegas shooting, you will learn, just occurred months before. So sniper fire is one of the possibilities. You hear shots from outside. He feels vulnerable, you will learn, the evidence will show. But the first thing he does is he doesn't run for cover. He stands there out in the open and immediately does what a cop does. You report shots fired.
He told the jury that at 2:23 p.m., Peterson reported, "Be advised, we have possible could-be firecrackers. I think we have shots fired, 1200 building." At this point, Peterson only had 4 minutes left before the massacre was over, and he was still confused as to where the shots were coming from. He said Peterson said 1200 building as a means of where he was, not necessarily where he thought the shots were coming from. He said it was just 30 seconds later when Peterson called for the school and the intersection to be shut down. Eiglarsh asked how Peterson was supposed to clear a building in a matter of seconds when it took a SWAT team of 12 people 30 minutes to clear it.
The evidence will show that my client did not commit any of the offenses alleged. He was sacrificed and thrown under the bus.
Objection argument.
And
That is sustained.
And the only verdict in this case, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention. The only verdict that speaks the truth in this case, based upon the evidence, is not guilty.
Danielle Gilbert was the first witness called to the stand. She was a junior at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas on that Valentine's Day in 2018. She testified that everyone at the school was in good spirits, many carrying around balloons and stuffed animals. She was in Building 12 at the time of the shooting.
Everything was going normal. We were all just sitting in our seats, listening to her lecture. And then about 20 minutes before the bell rang was when we heard the first shot. And immediately we dropped to the ground and started running to, I guess what you would call safety, just basically away from the door where the individual wouldn't be able to see us who was shooting. So we heard the first shot, immediately ran over to the corner of the room, and there was about 30 of us in the classroom, so we were all kind of at an L in the corner that's not by the door, and we just sat there and huddled and held each other, just in hopes that what we thought wasn't happening, or what we thought was happening wasn't happening.
She said that first gunshot was unmistakable. The shooter shot into her classroom, injuring 3 students and killing 1. She testified that there were 20 minutes between the shots and when the police arrived. No other officers came in before that.
Danielle, did you know who Deputy Peterson was?
Yes, I did.
Who did you know him to be?
I knew him as the police officer that was assigned to Stoneman Douglas.
Did you know that Deputy Peterson carried a firearm?
I did, yes.
Did Deputy Peterson ever enter your classroom that day?
He did not.
Did he ever enter the hallway?
He did not.
Did you ever see Deputy Peterson assist any students that day?
I did not.
Video she took was shown to the court. Gunfire could be heard, followed by screaming as the 4 injured students cried out for help. Former teacher Ivy Seamus also testified via Zoom. She had been a teacher at the school for 2 decades and taught social studies. She said that on Valentine's Day afternoon, she was teaching a class about the Holocaust, her last class of the day, which was comprised of 30 students. She was on the first floor of Building 12.
So after you heard those initial shots, what happened next?
So the students scrambled to different areas of the classroom. It was a very small classroom with a lot of furniture and no walk-in closet or nowhere to hide. We had never done an active shooter drill, so none of us were really prepared. And most of us were, I think all of us were really huddled down on the ground. And within seconds after we heard that in the hallway, shots were flying through the glass window of the door that ran down to the handle of the door, and they were flying all over our classroom.
She became emotional as she talked about the students who were injured and the 2 students who were killed in her classroom. One brave student who was huddled next to her was able to call 911 and tell the dispatcher their room number. She said within a half hour of the shooting, law enforcement arrived.
I think it was within the half hour that a SWAT team came, let themselves into our classroom.
And that day and prior to that day, did you know the defendant, Scott Peterson?
Very little. I don't think we had much interaction. I very little.
Did you see him that day at all?
I did not see him that day. In fact, I asked someone if he was on campus that day because I didn't know if he was there.
Sergeant Jeffrey Heinrich was a Coral Springs police officer on a K-9 unit. He was at the high school that morning, volunteering as he often did to landscape the baseball field. Sergeant Heinrich's wife was a coach and teacher at the school, and the couple's son was a junior. Sergeant Heinrich himself had experience as a school resource officer. He testified that he was watering the field when he heard a fire alarm go off, and groups of students started to make their way towards him. As he was watching the students come his way, he noticed they were all moving normally. It wasn't until he heard what he initially believed to be fireworks go off that everything started to change. Sergeant Heinrich said he continued his volunteer duties until a second round of fireworks began to go off. This time, students started to run from the buildings. He admitted that at this point, he was unaware of what exactly was happening, so he began to move towards the school.
At that point, once people started running, I believed that those were gunshots and that they weren't firecrackers any longer, based on my observations and things. So I resorted back to our training. Our training is that you run towards the sound of gunfire. I mean, it's what we're trained to do. We do, as far as our active killer, active shooter response is single purpose, single officer. You go to the sound of gunfire. So I didn't have a gun with me that day, unfortunately.
He said he ran into a school monitor who told him that the campus had an active shooter on site.
Well, for us, and especially in an active shooter situation, things change based on your stimulus. If you have gunshots that are actually actively going off, we're trained to go towards the sound of gunfire. So in our training, if the gun is going off and a shot is being thinged, people are dying. And that's the way you have to think about it as a police officer. If that gun's going off, someone's dying, especially on a school campus, because active shooters are so prevalent nowadays.
He said he also ran into a student, Kyle Lamont, in an adjacent parking lot from Building 12. Kyle had been shot and had managed to get out of the third floor of the building. At this point, he said he could no longer hear gunshots. Sergeant Heinrich testified that Kyle was screaming for his mom at the time and that he was just 14 years old. He assessed his injuries as life-threatening and said he knew he needed to help. As he was trying to get Kyle to a nearby building, another round of gunshots went off, but he said he could only tell that they were coming from the 12 or 13 building. He couldn't distinguish whether they were inside or outside. He said he was able to get Kyle into a nearby locker room where he put a tourniquet on his leg. Kyle was able to give him a full description of the shooter. He said he helped Kyle bandage his leg and then immediately began looking for more victims alongside the police units that had arrived. He stayed near Building 12 until a SWAT team cleared it.
Did you see Scott Peterson on the day of this incident?
No.
Did you see him enter any buildings?
No.
Did you see him render any aid to Aaron Feist?
No.
Any of the students?
No.
Did he assist you in clearing any buildings?
No.
Did you see him assist any law enforcement officer in doing anything?
I had no contact with him the entire day.
On cross-examination, Sergeant Heinrich said that Peterson was a friend.
And you knew my client from interactions that you had with him, correct?
Yes.
About 4 to 5 years, your son went to school there from 2015 to 2019, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And you knew him to be a good person, correct?
Yes. I would call him a friend of mine.
Okay. And you never saw him be a coward in any respect, correct?
No.
Okay. And just so we're crystal clear, during the entire shooting, you never saw my client at all, correct?
That is correct.
Let's explain why, because you were in completely different areas,
yes,
right?
Sir.
So you never would have seen what my client was doing, correct?
That's correct.
How he was acting?
I never had any interaction with him the entire day.
Great.
Peterson's attorney pointed out that Sergeant Heinrich also had a hard time figuring out if the sounds he was hearing were fireworks or gunshots, and from which direction they were coming. Former student Anthony Borges also took the stand. He had been shot 5 times, but managed to barricade the door of his classroom, saving the lives of 20 people in the process. He showed the courtroom the multitude of scars he sustained.
Did you think that you were going to die?
Yes.
Did you have any other, what else were you thinking while you were on the floor, on the third
When
floor?
I threw the phone away and everything, I was thinking about like, where's the help? Where's the cops? Like, well, how long they're gonna take this for taking me out, you know?
In terms of your thought process, where are the cops, where's the help? Did you keep thinking that over the course of the 40 some odd minutes you were on the floor, or did you eventually stop thinking about that?
I eventually accepted that, so I was like, you know what, I'm just chill over here.
Can you just say that louder? I'm sorry.
I just accepted the death.
You accepted that you were going to die.
Yeah.
40 minutes after the shooting, when law enforcement finally made it to his classroom, he received medical attention. He told the court that he was not aware who the school resource officer was. He did, however, know that the campus had an armed deputy.
Had you ever seen a uniformed officer with a gun on campus before?
Yes.
When you were thinking on the third floor before the officers arrived, were you thinking specifically about that officer? You got to say
Yes, I did.
And what were you thinking?
I was thinking like, there's no way like this could have happened to me or anyone, you know. If I'm an officer, I have a gun, I will automatically just go inside and like save anyone.
He said back in 2018, he had chosen to attend Marjorie Stoneman Douglas so he could play on their soccer team. He had dreams to play professional soccer in Brazil one day, but after the injuries he sustained, that became a nearly impossible goal. He also testified that the shots that day didn't sound like fireworks. 3 other officers testified that when they arrived at the scene, Peterson told them that the shooting was not at the 1200 building, but that it was coming from the parking lot area behind it. That mistake wasted valuable time. A creative writing teacher on the 3rd floor of Building 12, Stacy Lapel, testified about the horror she experienced that day. She told the court that when the shooting began, she couldn't distinguish the sound of the pops her classroom heard. At first, she assumed the sound might have been balloons or fireworks coming from outside. She testified that her students were also asking her what she thought the noises were. When the fire alarm went off, she began to evacuate her classroom, following the regular fire drill procedures. It wasn't until everyone was in the hallway that she realized something was terribly wrong. Someone started to scream, and the students who were leaving the hallway began funneling back to the classrooms. She was able to open her classroom door back up. She was shot in her arm. Coral Springs police detective Brett Schroy testified that he arrived at the school after a colleague told them that there was an active shooter on campus. Schroy's own son attended the school, and he knew he needed to help in any capacity. He testified that when he arrived, he ran into Scott Peterson. He said Peterson seemed very busy and very agitated.
Waited to what I thought there was a pause and recognizing that he's the SRO. He's been there the whole time. He would be the most knowledgeable about the location of the shooter. I asked very simply, where is the shooter?
And did he respond?
He did. He pointed at the 1200 building and said he's on the 3rd floor.
So other than what you had heard earlier, this is the first in real-time intelligence that you're receiving?
Yes.
Did you have any knowledge of where, obviously the SRO is telling you that. Do you have any knowledge or know where that he was getting that from? Did he tell you that?
I didn't want to burden him with a bunch of questions. I felt he was the most knowledgeable. So when he told me that, I took that at face value and backed away.
Okay. So I want to make sure we have the picture clear. In your mind, from that intelligence, you are believing that there's a shooter, not necessarily firing, but a shooter inside the 1200 building on the third floor.
That's correct.
And you've also, as you testified, you've already seen Coral Springs and maybe other agencies entering from the east end of the 1200 building, correct?
That's correct.
He said he and other officers cleared their way to the top of the staircase to get into a more elevated position. He had heard that the shooter was possibly shooting at first responders, and so he figured he could best shoot at him from there.
Where is the SRO in relation to you when you're going up that stairwell to get up to the second floor?
He's still in that same position that I had left him, which is kind of between the 700 building and the 1200 building.
All right, but is he is he out in the open, or is he sort of in a somewhat enclosed area?
He's in the open. It kind of struck me strange that he was not adopting that same idea that I was, that it was kind of bent over as I made movements to try to make myself small.
He said Peterson was standing up straight and had his gun in one hand and a radio in the other. He said he was never concerned that there was sniper fire. There were no signs of that, which he had learned to look for during his training. He grabbed another officer, a good friend of his, and said, "Come on, let's go." He said he wanted to get in there.
I'm going to have to stop you there because I want to know why you want to do that. What you think is causing you to do, you to say, I want to go there?
I think it's it's a combination of things. It's wanting to save my son, wanting to save other people's sons and daughters. It's what we signed up to do. It was our Super Bowl. You could say, if you weren't ready for that day, when would you be ready?
He ran inside and went to the base of the stairwell. He was waiting for the shooter to come down, since Peterson had said he was on the third floor. He then got word that the shooter was out on the ground and running west.
Describe for us what kind of effect that had on you.
It kind of scrambled my brain because I thought, how in the world did this person get past us?
He said he ran out the door and focused his rifle westbound. He said they were then notified that the video the intelligence people had been watching of the shooter was 20 minutes old, meaning the shooter had already long left the scene. When the defense called their witnesses, they called Deputy Arthur Perry, who was immediately emotional on the stand.
Good morning, Deputy Perry. How are you feeling right now?
It's a little upsetting for me.
Tell us why.
It was a very traumatic event in my life.
Okay, I understand that. Are you okay to help
Absolutely.
us with understanding what occurred and what you did?
Yes, sir.
Deputy Perry testified that he was a school resource officer at an elementary school in Parkland. He knew Scott Peterson. He would assist him whenever he needed help on campus, and they would also work football games together.
How would you characterize his professionalism, the way that he did his job?
He was very professional. He had a good rapport with the kids. He was an excellent deputy. In fact, I think his school, he had the most arrests out of any school because he was very proactive on campus.
On the day of the shooting, he said he was conducting dismissal at his school, which was about a mile away from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, when he heard Peterson on the radio saying something about shots fired. He put his bulletproof vest on, got his guns together, and immediately drove over to the school. He said he made it there in about 90 seconds.
As we're coming up to the fence, I had about 3 to 5 rounds go off very, very fast. Okay.
When you say rounds, did you recognize?
Shots fired.
Did you know them to be shots fired?
Yes, sir. I recognize them as shots fired.
All right. What do you do with that information?
Well, I'm trying to figure out where they came from, and I'm scanning the area to see if I can see a shooter.
You didn't just run right into the 1200 building?
I had a locked fence in front of me. We have to get through that locked fence.
Okay, let's say you get past the fence. Would you have run right into the 1200 building?
No, because I had no idea where the shots were from.
From the sound alone, first of all, could you tell whether they were contained inside or outside?
They definitely sounded like they were outside to me.
He said he saw Sergeant Heinrich in the parking lot with the student who had been shot. He said he got on his radio to call it in, but it took him a few times because the radio wasn't working properly. He testified that there were always issues with the radios in Parkland. He said Sergeant Heinrich, unfortunately, didn't tell him anything about the shooter.
Unfortunately, he doesn't tell me where the shooter is, who the shooter is, how many shooters there are, where he was last seen. He gives me no information. And I'm trying to key up on the radio. And at that point, Sergeant Goolsby gets the gate open. So at that point, we just run past him and start heading towards the school campus.
Did there come a time where you learned that Sergeant Heinrich, you knew him from Coral Springs, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did there come a time where you learned that Coral Springs had additional information that you guys did not?
Yes, after the fact.
Okay. You learned that they had...
They had all the information, all the 911 calls on the cell phone were going to their dispatch, and we didn't receive any information at all.
He said even as he got closer, he believed the shooter was on the outside, shooting towards the inside of the building.
Now, that turned out to be completely not what really happened, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So you can get it wrong, but it not necessarily be something sinister, right?
Yes.
I mean, up to that point, do you know that the shooter's inside the 1200 building?
Absolutely not. Again, I'm considering myself in the hot zone because I just ran past a student that got shot, and I ran up to the next building, and I see another person shot outside, and I'm seeing what appears to be gunshots on a window up above.
He told the court that the area is so big and there are so many places for someone to hide.
Had you eliminated that there could be sniper fire on the campus?
Absolutely not. Could have been someone anywhere in that campus shooting.
Could you eliminate that there were people running around with guns somewhere on campus?
No, because when we're trained to think always the +1 rule. So, like, again, when I ran past Heinrich, he didn't even say, is there one shooter or there's two shooters? He gave us no information, and he had a victim right there, which he had intel that he could have gave us right on the spot to assist us.
He said he never went into the 1200 building.
When was the first time that you learned that there was a shooter inside the 1200 building?
I didn't learn there was a shooter with victims inside the 1200 building until about 7 p.m. that night when I looked on Fox News on my phone because there was no communication telling us what was going on.
Samantha Oakley, a communications operator with the Broward Sheriff's Office, testified that she was working as a dispatcher on the day of the shooting.
You do hear when deputies say something over their police radios, correct?
Yes.
And do you recall hearing Deputy Peterson announce possible firecrackers, possible shots fired?
Yes, sir.
Was that the first call that you heard alerting that there was something going on at the school?
Yes, as he was saying that we were also getting a call coming in for me to give out.
Based upon what my client said to you, what do you then do in response?
You notify all of the road deputies and all units to respond. I notified my duty officer to let him know that we had a high priority incident possibly working at the school. And then you just start sending every available unit.
What is the term that you assign to a call that's of top priority like this?
We call it a red call, a high priority red call.
And was it based upon my client's transmission that caused you to label this a red call?
Yeah.
Alexander Wind was a student in his drama class when the shooting occurred. He said when he first heard the gunshots, he thought a bomb had exploded in the gym. He had no idea they were gunshots. Scott Peterson decided not to testify.
I have spoke with my client at length. He has a strong desire to speak with the jurors, but will be taking my advice and not testifying, believing as I do that the state has failed to meet their burden.
And so you have no other witnesses in addition to your client not testifying, you have no other witnesses?
That's correct. We are ready to rest in front of the jury.
In his closing arguments, Peterson's attorney, Mark Eiglarsh, stressed that hindsight is 20/20. He doesn't know there's one shooter. Nobody knows that. We have the luxury in this courtroom of hindsight, he told the jury. Eiglarsh spent 2 hours going over each witness, explaining why their testimony didn't prove his client was guilty. He was damned no matter what. He couldn't win. Facts don't matter when you're sacrificed, he said, reiterating his opening statements. The prosecution argued that even though Peterson had 28 years' experience as a school resource officer, he failed to do his job. Choose to go in or choose to run? Scott Peterson chose to run. When the defendant ran, he left behind an unrestricted killer who spent the next 4 minutes and 15 seconds wandering the halls at his leisure, because when Scott Peterson ran, he left them in a building with a predator unchecked, attorney Kristen Gomes argued. On June 29, 2023, after nearly 19 hours and 4 days of deliberations, the jury was ready to announce their verdict. Former Deputy Scott Peterson was found not guilty. He was acquitted of all 11 counts against him. He sobbed as the verdict was read by the judge and hugged his legal team. "I got my life back," he told reporters outside the courtroom. Many parents of the victims were furious over the verdict. "Sadly, we don't understand what you need to see to find people guilty in Broward County," Tony Montalto said. He lost his daughter Gina Montalto in the shooting. Max Schachter, whose son Alex was also killed, told local NBC6 News that Peterson is the epitome of failure. He went to the front of the building. He was there in under 2 minutes. He heard the gunshots that were fired and killed Coach Aaron Feiss. And heard those shots, he got scared and hid behind a concrete pillar for 40 minutes. Andrew Pollack, who lost his daughter Meadow, wrote on Twitter, "This man is a stain on everyone that has put on the uniform. I love our police officers, but you cannot count on them to save you." Although he was acquitted, Scott Peterson is not out of the woods yet. A civil lawsuit is now underway, brought on by 5 families of Parkland victims. As a part of that case, a reenactment of the shooting took place on August 4th inside the same building on the Marjory Stoneman Douglas campus. The building, which has been in the possession of the Broward Sheriff's Office, has been left untouched since 2018. Following Peterson's criminal trial, family members of the Parkland victims have had the opportunity to walk through the building and get a first-hand account of the terror their children and loved ones went through. It will be demolished later this year. And that's all for this episode. As always, I'd love to know what you think about this case. You can let me know by finding me on Twitter at CourtJunkiePod, on Instagram at CourtJunkie, or by emailing me at podcast@courtjunkie.com. This episode was researched and written by Law and Crime staff. Also, on a personal note, you may have noticed my voice giving out halfway through the episode. I got a little sick this past week, so thanks for bearing with me. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.